If you want to say only in Japanese, you will come across dake and shika in the dictionary. While there are grammatical differences in how they're used, are there other differences too? This short video explains these in more details. Dake means only and used in affirmative sentences. For example, John-san wa Nihon no eiga dake mimasu. It means John only watches Japanese movies. Nomi also means only in Japanese. It's also used in affirmative sentences, but this word is the writing word. You will find it in documents rather than in conversation. John-san wa Nihon no eiga nomi mimasu. I said dake and nomi are used in affirmative sentences, but actually these can also be used in negative sentences. The negative version of dake is explained briefly at the end. Shika also means only in Japanese. The difference in the usage from the previous two is that this is used only in negative sentences. John-san wa Nihon no eiga shika mimasen. This basically means the same as the previous two sentences. In general, dake and nomi simply express limitation in variety or amount, while shika often implies a sense of dissatisfaction or disappointment. While there are many ways to use dake and shika in Japanese, this video only covers the usage of noun or quantity followed by one of these expressions. When you want to describe minimum requirements for something, you use dake. For example, ID は一つだけでいいです. Only one ID is okay. The statement describes that you can only bring one ID, not more. このページだけ読めばわかります. If you only read this page, you will understand. You can read more pages, but one page is sufficient to understand it. You cannot use shika for describing the minimum requirements, but for writing, you can also use nomi. When you are talking about exceptions, you should use dake. 白い T シャツだけ半額です. Only white T-shirts are half price. If you use shika instead, the meaning changes into dissatisfaction rather than expressing exception. 山田さんだけボーナスをもらいました. Only Mr. Yamada received a bonus. When expressing something is insufficient, we use shika. Shika often expresses a sense of disappointment and dissatisfaction, but the following examples implies insufficiency. 卵が3つしかありません. There are only 3 eggs. This sentence implies that 3 eggs are not sufficient for what you want to do. Perhaps you are planning to cook a dish that requires more eggs. If you use dake, it becomes a neutral statement rather than expressing insufficiency. Here's another example. 10分しかありません. There are only 10 minutes. This sentence implies that the time is running out, which is causing stress. Maybe your deadline is coming up or you're running late. As I explained earlier, shika often carries a nuance of disappointment, but cases involving something unexpected, either positive or negative situations, we use shika. Here are some examples. 今日は入場料は半額しか払わなくてよかったです. Today I only had to pay half the admission. This conveys a sense of unexpected surprise. In this case, since you only paid half, the experience is actually positive. When you rephrase a sentence using dake, it no longer carries a sense of surprise. テストで30点しか取れませんでした. I only got 30 points on the test. This example is a typical expression of disappointment using shika, but it also conveys a sense of surprise rather than merely stating a fact. When you talk about focus or concentration, we use dake. For example, 私はこの学校でフランス語だけ勉強しています. I only study French at this school. This sentence implies that you are studying only French and nothing else. If you rephrase it using しか, it gives the impression that you don't study any other subjects and that there are some negativity and self-criticism with studying only French. 昨日右手だけレントゲンを取りました。Yesterday, they only took an X-ray of my right hand. When you are talking about the final method of hope, you can use しか. For example, これができるのは山田さんしかいません。The only one who can do this is Miss Yamada. If you use だけ, it sounds more like an exception rather than the last hope. Here's another example. これしか使えません。I can only use this. We saw that demo goes with affirmative and しか goes with negative, but there are a few more grammatical differences in their usages. When using demo, the particle can be optionally added. For example, スポーツはゴルフだけします and スポーツはゴルフだけをします. Both mean when it comes to sports, I only play golf. The particle o can be optionally added, as in the second sentence. This is not the case with しか. だけ can appear at the end of a sentence with des, while しか must be followed by a verb or adjective. For example, 朝ごはんはコーヒーだけです and 朝ごはんはコーヒーしか飲みません. Both mean I only have coffee for breakfast, but using しか, you have to have a proper verb at the end. Before I said that だけ is used in affirmative sentences, but actually you can use it in negative sentences as well. For example, 納豆だけは食べません. I only don't eat 納豆. 山本さんが上手なのはテニスだけじゃないです. Tennis is not the only thing Miss Yamamoto is good at. We also say だけしか, which is used in a negative sentence. This is basically a variation of しか, but adding an emphasis to make a stronger statement. For example, 山田さんは果物はみかんだけしか食べません. When it comes to fruits, Mr. Yamada only eats tangerines. Here's the grammar summary. だけ is used in affirmative sentences and しか is used in negative sentences to mean only. Sentences involving だけ can end with des, but sentences involving しか must end with a verb or adjective. だけ can also be used in a negative sentence. だけ can be followed by a particle, but no particle should follow しか. Here's a summary of meanings. When you want to express minimum requirements, use だけ. You can't express this with しか. When talking about exceptions, use だけ. When you use しか, gives a sense of dissatisfaction. When expressing insufficiency, use しか. Using だけ sounds more like a neutral statement rather than conveying insufficiency. When describe an unexpected situation, whether positive or negative, use しか. Using だけ loses the sense of surprise in a sentence. When talking about focus or concentration, use だけ. Using しか changes the meaning to dissatisfaction rather than focus. When describing the final method or last resort, use しか. Using だけ makes it sound like an exception rather than the only remaining option. To learn Japanese language more seriously, visit my Udemy courses through the links below. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. You can also participate in daily quizzes from the community section. If you have any requests for Japanese grammar to be covered, please leave your comments in the comment section below. Thank you for watching.